The legal information in this program is of a general nature and is not intended as specific advice. If you have a legal problem, contact a lawyer, community law centre or Citizens Advice Bureau.
Kia ora, welcome to Know Your Rights. This week we're talking about traffic law. Traffic laws have been toughened up in recent years and penalties have been made more severe. Many people don't realise that traffic convictions often carry with them a loss of your driver's licence for at least 6 months. This has a huge impact on your ability to get to and from work. It also affects your family commitments. For repeat offenders, the penalties will get more severe with each conviction. I've often dealt with people who have been very surprised when I've told them they face going to jail for a traffic offence. If you have a drinking problem, get help for it. If you keep drinking and driving, a judge will put you in jail. Your car might also be taken away and sold, which will impact not only on you, but on your family as well. Your car can be confiscated, but you can still be left with a debt to a finance company for the loan you took out to pay for the car. If it's your first conviction, you might be able to get a limited licence so you can get to work, but they're expensive. Now, to talk more about traffic law, we're joined by two lawyers, Meli Tuilotolava and Tua Saseve. Malolele, Meli.
Malolele, Catriona. Malolele, kau whanonga mai. Kau hingoa ko Meli Tuilotolava, pia koe loe au ni manukau. O ko ngau he whahai kau whaihia, pia whawhawonga i kakai ki he whakamawanga whakawhamiri. Malo.
Talo whalava, Tua.
Talo whalava, Catriona. Talo whamili. Ia whaatalo whatfo i malula whaafonga. O te ngalue i Papatoi, ma ofisa mlo tu fine. Mai o ngaluenga ia I tulanga sol tulafonga ia wala, ia whaatasi fo I ma sol tulafono o isi vaenga ia o pala o ngaluenga o lo ia nei.
Meli, can you tell us what happens when someone's stopped at a breath testing checkpoint?
Well, if you've been drinking, Catriona, it's one's worst nightmares to approach a checkpoint.
That's true, yeah.
And what you don't do is turn around and drive the other direction.
Absolutely, yeah.
Usually there's a lot of police officers there, and one will get in their car and chase you.
Yeah, they will be, yep.
But when it's your turn, usually the officer will come up, ask the driver to wind their window down, and they'll put something through the window, and they'll say to you, speak to that and say, tell me what your name and your address is. And the whole purpose is to measure whether you've got any alcohol in your breath. And of course, if you have got alcohol in your breath, there'll be an invitation to do something else after that.
And you're calling it an invitation. Can people refuse the invitation?
Well, because people can do what they like, but if you do refuse, there's usually a consequence. And so it's not advisable to refuse, but the first invitation is to come with me to the bus and we'll undergo the second breath test, as it were, the evidential breath test, and the device will be there for you to use. But it's not advisable to refuse any request once you're surrounded.
Right. And so people have the breath test and then the police have to offer them the option of having a blood test? Yes,
usually, of course, the legal limit for driving is below 400 micrograms of alcohol per litre of breath. And if you blow below that, it's a pass. So they'll give you your key back and you're on your way. But if you blow 400 or above, then there'll be an invitation for you to have an option to take a blood test. And that's not an option you don't have to take.
And when would it be a good idea for someone to have a blood test?
Usually people, it'd be really good if people knew their own ability to absorb alcohol, because alcohol expires with time and also with absorption into food. So if you haven't eaten any food and you've been drinking for 2 hours or something, and you've blown 400 or above, it's a complete waste of money to have a blood test, because it does cost you, if you're over the limit, you have to pay for the blood testing analysis, and also for the doctor to come and take it out of you. So there are some situations where you would opt for a blood test. For instance, if you've just stopped drinking your 1 glass of wine and you're going home because you don't want to have another one, but you've only just had a few glasses at the most, and you blow and your breath is higher, and if you've been eating and all that, my suggestion would be to take a blood test.
Okay. And Tua, how can people get legal advice if they're stopped late at night for drink driving?
Well, under the Bill of Rights, a person is entitled, when they're detained by the police or held by the police, to ask for the chance to speak to a lawyer. And once they do that, then the officer will then make arrangements for the person to speak to a lawyer. They must make it clear to the police officer that they wish to speak to a lawyer before a police officer is obliged to provide that opportunity. And that opportunity to talk to a lawyer won't cost the person anything, because it's covered by the relevant law. And so really that's when you get to talk to a lawyer. If you don't have a lawyer, then the police officer will provide a list of lawyers for you to choose who to speak to. Now, if you have any difficulty with the language, then you also have to state to the police officer that you wish to speak to a particular lawyer who speaks the language that you speak.
Right, yep. And so it doesn't matter what time it is. If it's 3 o'clock in the morning, there's that list of lawyers that you have to be given, and you can ring a lawyer and it won't cost you anything.
Yes, yes. There's a process where every night or every 24-hour period, there's a list of lawyers who have made themselves available for such calls, and to advise and assist the person who's being held by the police at any time.
Right. Can you tell us what the penalties are for drink driving?
Well, for a first and second offence, the penalty is a prison sentence of not more than 3 months, or a fine of $4,500. And then there's also the mandatory, or also the person must be disqualified for a minimum term of not less than 6 months. And that's, yes, so
okay, but for a first or second drink driving, it would be pretty unusual to be sent to jail, wouldn't it? So normally the first time you'd get a fine and a disqualification?
And a disqualification, and normally the fine is assessed at fairly close to what your level is.
Right, yeah. So if you're, say, $850, you're quite likely to get a fine of $700 or $800.
Correct, correct. If you, yes, and depending also on how early or how late you plead to that particular charge.
And if it's your third drink driving, though, from that time on, you'd be in danger of the possibility of going to jail?
Yes. If you are convicted of a third or subsequent, that is fourth or fifth, etc., then the maximum penalty then is increased to a prison term of not less than 2 years. Sorry, not more than 2 years, and a fine of not more than $6,000. And you must also be disqualified for at least 1 year, unless, of course, you can satisfy the court that there are special reasons that you should be disqualified for a lesser period.
It's actually very unusual not to be disqualified for drink driving, so it's pretty much if you're convicted of drink driving, you have to be disqualified, and the shortest time is normally 6 months.
6 months, yes, for a first or second offence, yes.
Right. Millie, how can someone get a limited licence if they are disqualified from driving?
Yes, thank you, Catriona. One has to prove extreme hardship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's commonly known as a work licence, but I think if you're not working but you've got obligations that requires you to drive, then you
family
can
or something.
Yes, family, like taking somebody to the doctor periodically. So you've got to apply demonstrating extreme hardship to your life or someone else's life that you're taking care of. So it can be done. But there is a compulsory 1 month period off the road. So what normally happens is that if you're required to drive, then you get somebody else to drive for you, and after the expiration of 1 month, then you have to go and make your application through a lawyer, unfortunately, which is quite costly, and but it is available there. And I think if you've got, this is your first disqualification, that is the time to make your application, because if you've been disqualified twice or more, there's no chance.
You can't get a limited licence.
No.
How much? Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to pick up on that. Sorry, Millie. I think there are two standards that is applied as far as getting a limited licence is concerned. For the particular person, you have to show extreme hardship, but there's a lesser threshold, so to speak, for any other person who's dependent on you. There, in that case, it's just undue hardship. So
right.
the standard of hardship is not as high.
Right. Yeah.
Thanks, Tua.
Yeah. How much do people normally have to pay to get a limited licence?
In the $800, depending on the amount of work that you need to go into. Obviously, if you have had a second conviction and the work is much more involved in trying to get your limited licence, then obviously that's going to take much more time, and it's going to cost a lot more than for the case that Mele has mentioned, and that is that you've just had a first conviction for drink driving.
There's also quite a variation in the fees that lawyers charge, so it's a good idea to shop around and maybe ring a few different lawyers.
Yes, yes, that's quite right.
Mele, can you tell us when someone would be charged with careless driving?
Yes, Catriona. Careless driving, otherwise known as inattentive driving, or driving without attention, and that often happens. People are charged when they, for instance, driving onto a footpath, or they accidentally drive into somebody's fence or bump into somebody in front of them on the road, where they're not paying attention. So that's generally classed as careless driving. It's in terms of tariff, it's quite a low tariff for careless driving, but certainly can result in some dire consequences.
Yeah. So if you're driving too closely behind someone and they stop and then you bang into the back of them, you would almost certainly be charged with careless driving?
I would think so, yes.
Yeah. And what's the difference between careless and dangerous driving, Tua?
Well, dangerous driving involves either the way that you drive is deemed to be dangerous to the other road users, or the speed that you may be driving. So, and also the difference is also reflected in the penalties. With careless, there are two sets of penalties. If there is no injury involved, then it's just a finable offence, and the court may order disqualification. But if it's careless driving causing injury, then the penalty is not more than 3 months prison, or a fine of not less or not more than $4,500, and also there's a mandatory disqualification unless, of course, you can prove special reasons. So
dangerous driving is the more severe.
Right, and dangerous driving, again, there are two sets of penalties. If it's someone who has been convicted of dangerous driving but there's no injury involved, then again it's the it's deemed a minor offence carrying a maximum penalty of 3 months prison or a fine of $4,500. Disqualification is 6 months, a minimum of 6 months disqualification. If there's injury involved, then the penalty is increased to 5 years maximum, or a fine not more than $2,000, and the disqualification that must follow must be not less than 12 months.
Millie, can you tell us what offences boy racers can be charged with?
Boy racers offences are relatively new in the overall scheme, but because modified cars now, you can be charged if you're having excessive loud noises coming out of your car. And what makes boy racers different from the norm, of course, is that they also pour stuff like oil onto the road. That's an offence.
Yeah. To
do their wheelies on.
And drag racing.
And drag racing each other during the night down the road. All those things are new offences, and now there's also new penalties for such things.
Right. Tua, what are the penalties for boy racer offences?
Well, the penalties normally involve disqualification.
Because they want the boy racers off the road for a while, don't they?
Exactly. And if a person is convicted of a third boy racer offence, then that enables the court to order the confiscation and destruction of the motor vehicle that's involved.
And that's the car crushing that we've seen on TV recently?
Yes.
That hasn't actually happened. That was the first one recently, wasn't it?
First one.
Okay. Millie, if someone's disqualified and then the police catch them driving, they'll actually be charged with the offence of driving while disqualified, won't they?
Absolutely. That's a separate offence. So, you know, don't get caught driving when you're supposed to be disqualified, because it has dire consequences.
And what are those? Well,
the first driving was disqualified offence. You know, the normal penalties, fine, community-based sentences, imprisonment are also available. But the judges normally impose on first driving was disqualified, okay, they'll give you another chance with a further disqualification cumulative on the current one. But if you're coming up for your third disqualification driving offence, then more than likely your freedom is going to be looked at quite severely, and you can end up with doing a lot more community work, or in fact going to prison for your second or subsequent are currently being dealt with, in my experience, by the courts within the position of imprisonment.
Okay. And for the first one, what you'd likely have is that you'd have another 6 months disqualification added on to the disqualification you already got for the drink driving.
That's
and
right.
You would get another fine too.
That's correct. And the more times you come back, the disqualification minimum period goes up as well. Because
each time you come back, the judge will give you a tougher penalty. Lots of people think that they'll come back and they keep getting the same penalty, but it's not. It actually keeps going up, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It does keep going up, but there comes a point, you know, if you're a prolific driver that's disqualified and coming back all the time, the judge will have a look at your overall picture, and there is provision in the law that allows the judge to impose a community-based sentence to enable this person to get their disqualification period over and done with, rather than keep on enlarging it by imposition of adding on 6 months or whatever at the tail end. There is a real humanitarian aspect of the law that allows the judge to impose a community base.
So, Catriona, can I just pick up on that? Also, for someone who is stopped by the police and found to be driving whilst disqualified, or found to be driving whilst suspended, or found driving without a licence, the police have the power to impound a vehicle and keep it for 28 days. So the person is going to lose the use of the vehicle for that 28 days.
And you actually have to pay for the storage costs,
as well.
So that's really expensive, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So lots of penalties. Thanks to my guests, lawyers Tua Sasevi and Millie Tuilotolava. Now, here are the 5 key points you need to know about traffic law. You will lose your licence for at least 6 months if you are convicted of drink driving.
E se ia lo laisene ave taavale mo se taimi e ono masina pe silinga atu fo'i. Pe a whaamaonia so soli tu la fono o le a ave taavale a o ova le ava I lau manava po o lo toto.
O ka pau te ke hala ia I he whakauri ko nā. E to'oho laiseni whakauri ki he mahina e ono whai ki o lunga.
Your car will be confiscated if you're convicted of drink driving for a second or subsequent time.
E whao e sea sau taavale pe a whaamaonia whaalua pe sili atu so soli tu la fono o le ave taavale a o ova le ava I lau manava po o lo toto.
O ka pau te ke hala ia I he whakauri ko nā tu o ua whai ki o lunga e mole ho o motoka pea koe mea lele.
The police can immediately suspend your licence if you speed at 40 kilometres or more above the speed limit or if you have a very high blood alcohol reading.
E mawhai e leo ona se ia lo laisene pe a whaasaina ona e avea se taavale pe a maua oe o e avea se taavale I se sawasawa I se linga atu le whaasfulu kilomita I le I tūla pe sili atu fo'i I lo le sawasawa o whaatanga ina pe ua mawalunga tele le ava I lau manava po o lo toto.
O ka pau e mau koe he lele lahi I hala o ku limiti ai lele ki he kilomita e nima noa kana e lahi hake ho o lele aki ai kilomita e wha noa whai ki o lunga ai na ke lele ko ia he kilomita e hiva noa whai ki o lunga e lava ke whakamalo lo I ho laiseni whakauri he taimi pe o ku mau ai koe pea mea tatau pe e o ka pau na e fuuma o lunga ai kawa malohi I ho o sivi toto.
Drag racing, wheel spinning and burnouts can lead to loss of licence and car confiscation.
A e whaia ia whainga e pei o tu ngā taavale o le whaavivilinga o pau pe o ai fo'i ua pusa I le vevela o pau I le lātou whaavivilinga. E ono mawhai ai ona se ia lo laisene ma whaasaina ai ona e avea se taavale whaapea fo'i ma le whao e sea o lau taavale.
Ko e whe auhi whakauri lova mo e whakavilohi ai vae ho ka mo e whenga ke vevela ai vae ho ka ke whakailonga I he hala. Ko e whahinga si pinga whakauri eni e more ai ho laiseni pea moho o ka.
You can get a limited licence for work if you lose your licence for the first time, but it's expensive to get a limited licence.
E mawhai ona e talasanga ina se laisene whaapitoa. A wanga luenga po nisi tūlanga whaapitoa. Pe a whaato a se ia lo laisene me whaasaina ona e avea se taavale. Ai e taunga tā, matele se tupe e te ono tutongi. Mo sausa I linga o se laisene whaapitoa.
O ka pau e tutu uni ke mole ho laiseni, o ku malawa ke apalai ke o atu ha o laiseni whakangata ki ho o ngāwe, ka ku pau foki ke totongi ai paangalahi ke mau ai laiseni peheni.
Now it's time for your questions. A viewer has asked, what is a Benefits Review Committee hearing and do I need a lawyer? If you're unhappy with a decision that Work and Income New Zealand has made about your benefit, the way to challenge it is to complete a review of decision form or write a letter to Work and Income New Zealand. You can download the form from the Work and Income New Zealand website. Send your review to your local Work and Income office. Work and Income will do an internal review and advise you either that it agrees with your complaint or that it thinks the original decision is correct. If Work and Income decides that the original decision was right, it will send your review application to the Benefits Review Committee. The committee will send you a copy of the report prepared by Work and Income and make a time for you to attend a Benefits Review Committee hearing. The committee consists of 2 Work and Income staff and 1 community representative. You give your side of events and Work and Income explains its position and the committee asks questions. It usually takes about 40 minutes. My experience is that the Work and Income decision is nearly always upheld by the committee. You will then need to appeal to the Social Security Appeal Authority. Legal aid will not pay for a lawyer to go to the Benefits Review Committee, but you can get legal aid to go to the Social Security Appeal Authority. My view is that the Benefits Review Committee is a process you have to go through to have your complaint dealt with at the Social Security Appeal Authority, which is an independent judicial tribunal. So I suggest that you go to the Benefits Review Committee yourself, but then find a lawyer to go to the Social Security Appeal Authority later if you do not succeed at the committee. If you have a question about any area of law, please email it to info@tritv.co.nz. Use Know Your Rights in the subject line. We won't use your name on screen, but please put your name in the email. That's our program for this week. Please join us next week when we'll talk about how you can get free help when you have a legal problem. We'll be speaking to guests from a community law centre and from Citizens Advice Bureau who'll explain how they can help you. Please look at the information on screen now if you need more help about traffic law.
The legal information in this program is of a general nature and is not intended as specific advice. If you have a legal problem, contact a lawyer, community law centre or Citizens Advice Bureau.